So if you are getting ready to write or publish your book, one of the most important things that you will need to understand is how to position yourself in the market, how to brand, and how to get your book out there. We'll be speaking with Kathy Meis, who's the founder and CEO of Publish, the world's first complete publishing solution with integrated marketing, branding, and discoverability features. With more than 25 years of experience in the media and publishing industry, she has served in a wide variety of editorial and management positions at some of the world's leading media companies, including CBS and Forbes. She is a founding partner of the PubSmart Publishing Conference in Charleston, as well as a professional writer, editor, ghostwriter, and entrepreneur. Kathy speaks and blogs regularly about publishing, book promotion, author branding, social marketing, and discoverability, and has been a featured speaker at the Book Expo America, Women in Media, Grub Street, Indie Author Fringe, and Indie Recon, among others. I've had the pleasure to get to know Kathy over the past about year and a half and work with her, and she knows her stuff, and thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, happy to be here, Alexa. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So some of the things we're going to cover in this conversation are basically what's happening in the marketplace, some of the biggest mistakes around positioning and marketing. And I think this is such a fantastic topic because I think the number one problem that I see with indie authors is they do all this work to have a beautiful book and then they launch to crickets.
Yes.
They haven't done
hard.
Any marketing.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it's heartbreaking because so much goes into creating that wonderful story or nonfiction book. And you want to be there as early as possible to say there's got to be a foundation on the marketing side. And I think it even starts in the manuscript and with the cover and really understanding who you're writing for. Who your audience is. One of the things I tell indie authors to do just as an exercise, because I get hired and paid a lot of money to do positioning studies for authors. And I say, go out and find your virtual bookshelf. So if you wanted your book, if you could create a bookshelf of the most wonderful books that are like yours, what would those 10 books be, those 10 authors be? And how would you fit in with them? And how would you differentiate yourself from that virtual bookshelf? And that, really is the difference between being a writer and being your own publisher is the fact that you're talking about the book as a information or an entertainment product. Mm-hmm. And that's hard, I think, for a lot of authors to make that transition because it's such a work of love. But, to be successful, you really have to put in, and you can even be traditionally published and need to do that because you're part of that marketing effort. So, looking at it from the positioning, like how do I fit, with these other books and what are they doing? What are their trim sizes? What do their covers look like? What's the synopsis? What's, the subtitle? What's their metadata look like when they're, positioning it in different subcategories on places like Amazon? Page count, all of those things. So you kind of want to know all of that. And then you want to know where that audience hangs out so you can study their social profiles. You can study their marketing efforts, all of that. And really that should be happening 3 to 6 months before you launch, and it's tough. It's a tough juggle because that's when you're kind of finishing up the manuscript too. Right. So not always smart to try to do it alone. It's a lot of hats to wear.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that really is, I think that's one of the biggest disservices that self-publishing has done is that it's, I mean, I love self-publishing. Obviously, all of my books are self-published, but it's created this idea that anyone can just write a book and publish it and become a successful author. And it doesn't take into account everything you just said, which is massive.
Yeah, it's a massive learning curve, not just on the craft of writing, but on the business of publishing.
Exactly.
And the concept that I use the word self-publishing, but it's really independent publishing. Right. You are starting, at Publish, we use the word authorpreneur, which some people love and some people hate, but the concept being that you are an entrepreneur who is an author and you are launching a product into the marketplace and and you need to know the business side of it. And that does mean, understanding what you don't know, starting to learn constantly, hiring people to assist you. You don't build your business alone. I certainly can't build my business alone. And then really, getting that team together, you're the head of the helm, but it's a lot to learn. But if you do it, and some of it is very systematic. I mean, there's just things you need to do prior to launch. And I just see authors exhausted from the craft of finishing the manuscript, and they just, they're like a few yards from the finish line, and that energy it takes to just ignite this other whole side of your indie publishing effort on the marketing is tough. But it has to be done, because you don't want to launch into crickets. You want to hit the ground running and just build momentum and understand the goals. If you're with your first book, I think there's different goals for the first book than you have for the second and third book that you write. But I see authors, launching and not even knowing if they're writing a series or not. And then you say, well, that is a huge missed opportunity, because from a branding perspective and positioning perspective, you just told the marketplace is a one-off. And guess what? In your genre, they're not even going to open the cover, because in this genre, they get connected to characters and they want a lot of content with that character. So if you think that you've got book 2 and 3 in this series, you better tell the marketplace that right from the start.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's funny, because one of the questions that I see a lot is, should I start marketing my book before it's even written? And I'm like, yes, that's like the thing. It's so funny. We were talking earlier about how I'm an author coach, or a book, would you call it a book shepherd? Which is a very nice term. I like that. And I mean, it's funny. We dive into marketing like week 1. Like, this is what you're going to start doing now. But I haven't written my book yet. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Get something out there.
Tell the world that you're an author. I mean, what's interesting, iBooks now, you can put your book on pre-order a year in advance.
Right.
And, there are authors who are writing 2, sometimes 3, that seems really intense to me, but several books a year to keep, because content sells content. So
absolutely,
the toughest thing is to just have one book. That's a tough thing in this marketplace. But I think, you're right on. Start telling the world. And you know what? Telling the world also kind of keeps you accountable. And, authors are busy. A lot of them have full-time jobs, and it kind of, you've kind of put it out there. I am going to be an author, and I'm starting to tell the world about, my work, and that, you got to live up to that then. So it's not a bad thing to keep you accountable to start talking about it. And people love to be part of the journey.
Yes.
So when you launch, they're vested in your success, because you brought them into your fan base really early, and they will be your biggest advocates, and you need that again at launch. So
that's exactly the route that I'm taking this time. I'm writing my, I've written a fiction book before, but I never published it. So this is my first official fiction book.
Oh, congrats.
I haven't written a word of it, but I've already got my launch group set up with 100 people in it. I already have my cover. I already have all this stuff in place, because this is what I've learned over the past 5 years, is that you have to do exactly what you just said. So yeah, by the time launch comes around, well, first of all, I need accountability, because, we've got so many things going on that how do you find time to fit your book into it? But I have to get it out of my head. I have to. It's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah, and now the world kind of knows, so they're going to keep you honest. But
exactly.
It is, it's an extraordinary thing to write a book. Anyone who does that should be really proud. But to be your own publisher is this additional layer, which has incredible benefits, but you kind of have to put on a different hat, have a different mindset when you think about your book as an entertainment product. That's a really tough word sometimes for authors to go, okay. But I get it, as an entrepreneur myself, and I've been dealing with content and ghostwritten for 30 years now. It's a long time. But you get attached to your content.
Yes, absolutely.
But you have to make that switch and start to think about, and that's really, when publishers say no to a manuscript, it doesn't mean they necessarily are saying no to the story. They're saying no to a market fit in a particular vertical that they know well, or that maybe is too crowded in this season, or this particular time of year. So they just have to take a pass. And that's the publisher hat. It's not about the story always. It's about the positioning and the marketing, and having the bandwidth to take on a story, in that vertical. So I think, authors just need to be aware that that's a really crucial piece of being successful as an independent author, is putting on the publisher's hat.
Yeah, I agree completely. Let's talk a little bit about Publish, because it's such an interesting company, and I love it. I love what you guys do. I think it's so unique to some of the marketing things that are available. So will you tell us how you started it, why you started it, and what you guys do?
Yeah, so you said it great. It's the world's first complete publishing solution with integrated marketing, branding, and discoverability elements. And that was really what we saw, is authors needed a more complete solution, and they needed the branding and marketing built into that solution, so they didn't have to, pieces are all over the place. So, we're building a platform where they can write, publish, sell, track, market their work, all from a single dashboard. And we started it, really because of the branding problem. First of all, we're talking about marketing, but branding is also crucial for authors. And it's, your long-term play, but there's a lot of evidence that readers are 15 times more likely to buy a work from an author whose name they recognize. So, I see a lot of authors go out with big titles, and then the URL to their website is for the book. They don't have a lot of images of themselves. They're not really comfortable with that. So when we built Publish, it's, your face, your content, and then your story behind the story, which goes into this piece of content called a book bubble. But everything we build, even our writing tool, is designed to give you the ability, as an author, to share your work and use content to build your brand and images. And that's all automated through our technology. So we have a writing tool. It's the only one in the world where you can share, as we're saying, well before you launch, you can share excerpts from your book into social media, anywhere that you can put a link, basically. And all of it's branded around you. It's got your bio, it's got a synopsis. If you have the cover can be there. And then you tell the story behind the story. So our technology handles all of the marketing and branding pieces, and you get to just share more content. And there's a million stories behind every book. So it's a very comfortable experience for the authors. And, if you have 1 or 2 chapters and you're 9 months before launch, you can start sharing from your manuscript while you're writing your book. And then at the end of that process, you click a button and you have a distributable EPUB that will validate at all the major retailers. So all of our technology multitasks for the author. But the nice thing is, and I'm sure you always encourage your authors to do pre-order campaigns, because they're so effective. And when you do that, you just click a button, where are my pre-order campaigns running? And now you have a pre-order button on your Rough Cut book bubbles. So
nice.
Again, call to action, drive people to that pre-order campaign, and branding yourself, marketing. The power of excerpting is great, but most of the excerpting is managed by someone else on the retailer. They've got their 20%. You don't get to select it. You don't get to brand it. With your image, you don't get to tell the story behind the story. So we kind of changed that experience. And it's, very powerful.
Yeah, I love it. I think I love the way it looks. I mean, there's something to be said for, it's really aesthetically appealing.
Yeah. Well, it's meant to, my whole moment there was when I love bookstores. And when you go into a bookstore and you pick up a book, you have a social moment with that content and that creator, you know, and it's very quiet. There's no ads. There's no one talking to you. You have your coffee. It's a form of entertainment. And I wanted to bring a micro browsing experience online that gave you, again, this very intimate social experience with the writer and the content. And there's not a lot of that outside of a bookstore, and yet we really need it because most of the shopping is done online now.
Exactly. And yeah. So that leads me into another question about ebooks, and how do you think that ebooks, the EBook Revolution, has changed the way that authors are now building their career?
Well, I think there's a lot more agility in your ability to launch and learn and adjust, because, you know, you can, and I'm not recommending this, but you can go out there and test concepts, even in like shorter formats, novellas. The journey to get from story into the marketplace can be much faster with ebooks. I think, you know, we've hit, like, that was the first wave, was the technology, you know, just to get there with an ebook. And I think now we're entering a completely new phase of that disruption. And there's a lot more sophistication among indie authors. And now, you know, I speak a lot about the concept of channel marketing. So, you know, each channel, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookstores, libraries, Kobo, you know, ebooks and libraries, those are all different channels that authors have the ability to get into, but every channel has its own discoverability aspects. You have to be optimized for certain channels. Certain channels make more sense for revenue, while others make sense for discoverability and brand building. And others make sense just for social proof. So I think that the concept now is not just ebooks, but like all of these channels working for these authors in a way that lifts them to a new level of sales and awareness. And I think that there's a lot to learn about each channel. I mean, we're doing a lot of work with our authors on the library channel. And, you know, just even how you prepare your book, your copyright page, so that book makes it from either the stack of books to the shelf, or it makes it, you know, into the database in a discoverable manner, has to do with, you know, some of the cataloging information that you put at the front of your book. So if you don't have that cataloging information, you're much less discoverable in a marketplace that, you know, in a channel that might be really lucrative for you, because they will pay more in the ebook market than you're going to get in an Amazon channel. You can actually price your book higher in that channel.
That's really interesting. Do you have, I see most self-published books do not have cataloging information in there. Do you guys have some resources on how to do that? Or do you know of places for people to find information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I can send you, I mean, we actually negotiated, you know, a discount with a company that does that, and I can send you some information on that. Maybe
Sure.
You can add that as a resource at the end. And it, you know, again, it's just learning what optimizes you in each of the channels. And again, that's your publisher hat. Yeah. And that's, you know, really what they own for so long is the distribution channels. And now they've been opened up to the indies, and the libraries are, you know, becoming much more open to independent authors. But again, you got to have a great product. It's got to be a good, you know, fit for their particular audience. And just like bookstores, libraries have different audiences. And, you know, you get into the right libraries, there's just a database behind there showing checkouts, and there's a, you know, a chance for great viral effect regionally or, you know, even contextually. So, and they find their information, the librarians, in different places than consumers do or bookstore owners do. So, you know, there's just a lot to learn in each channel. And that's one of the things, you know, we're really trying to specialize in ad publish as we've launched our print on demand and digital distribution piece of our business.
Can you expand a little bit on what you mean when you say optimized for each channel? That might be something that people in the audience don't understand.
Sure. So let's just talk Amazon, right? So Amazon is one of the biggest search engines in the world. And I give a talk called Metadata is Your Brand, and everybody gets like a nervous pale look on their face. But what that means is that their computers are interpreting your messages. And so it's not like you and I having a conversation. You have to literally understand how those computers are going to place your book, how they're going to position your book in the marketplace. And that's why, again, starting with those 10 books or 5 to 10 books that are on your virtual bookshelf, you can literally scroll down on the Amazon page and see the category strings that will show you how different authors are getting to the highest position in the search engines by taking on really super segmentation, as it were. So, you don't just want to be, if you wrote a YA novel set in 1960s, you don't want to just be in YA novels because it's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of authors there. So you want to go to the category strings that get you into historical, 20th century. If there's like something in your book about family values, there's family sagas. There's all kinds of segmentation that you can be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. So that's something you need to understand about the online retailer channels, especially Amazon. Each of them allows you to input that metadata or those information fields differently. So, iBooks has a completely different way of inputting the information than Amazon, as does Barnes & Noble. The other thing is if you have multiple books, so when we upload a book to all of the retailers, we do it organically because, we don't do one version of the book and then upload it everywhere. Because if the author has multiple books, the links at the back of their ebook to go to their other content literally take you end of the book to, oh gosh, gotta get the second book by this author, to that product page, but it has to be retailer specific. So it's a great marketing opportunity, to do that on each of the retailers and have the links. So your Barnes & Noble links need to be your Barnes & Noble links, and you have to have a Barnes & Noble version of your ebook. The same thing, if you if you get into Overdrive, or that's the library market, you want to have, again, a library version of your book that has the cataloging information in the front of it, so that when there's much more discoverability by that channel and those computers if it's in the format that they're reading. So there's 1,000 examples of this. Each channel has different upload specifications. Each channel has different marketing opportunities. So if you're running a pre-order or a marketing campaign on Amazon, you want to know about Amazon marketing services so you can run ads. And it's an extraordinary tool that's very affordable for authors, but you need to, again, to do an effective Amazon ad, you need to understand your comparable titles. Because you can literally, so when you upload your book to Amazon, you cannot put, James Patterson or, any of his book titles. That's breaking the rules. But when you run an Amazon ad, you can actually put James Patterson and 3 of his titles, however many. So you can have up to 1,000 keywords. So if you really understand, who your market is reading, and they give you incredible data, and it's, about what keywords are working, where you're getting the impressions, where you're getting the click-through, and, basically your return on that investment. So don't even do it in the beginning to make money. Do it in the beginning to learn about your readership and what the readers think is a comp for you. So when you get those click-throughs and you see the purchases, then you're like, okay, that is a great comp for me. This particular author or this particular title is a great comp for me. So, that's again, understanding your readership and how they're finding books.
So for anyone who has previously published a book and not had any sales, I'm sure this conversation just made your head spin round and round and round and around to the point of earlier of why you should hire someone who knows what they're doing when you're trying to launch a book, because wow, that's a lot to learn. That's a lot.
No, it is a lot to learn. But it doesn't mean if you started out and you didn't get it right, again, you
can fix it.
It's all right. It's all great ideas in the entrepreneurial world are a dime a dozen. It's the execution and the fact that you're open to learning. So you stumble, you don't get one piece of your funnel right or your sales, and marketing plans right. You just tweak it. But the one thing that is hard for authors, it's hard for me because I'm a word person as well, but I've had to learn this as an entrepreneur, is you should really study the numbers. Mm-hmm. That's, like, where is it that you lose people? And are you even gathering, consumer data? Like, missed opportunity again, if at the end of your book, you do not have a click-through to a website that isn't just a picture of your book and a synopsis, but is actively saying, okay, welcome to my website in a pop-up. I have a free gift for you. And all they have to do is put in their email or their first name in their email. So now you've gone from selling a book to a consumer you don't know to bringing that consumer who liked your book enough that they went to your website and they wanted to learn more about you. And they said, oh, well, I love the book. I'd love to read a short story or the next chapter or whatever of this book. Some of the more successful authors who have, big lists give away several books mm-hmm. because they know those books are going to draw in a long-term fan who then is going to stay with them through all the other books they write. But again, that is, it's a marketing funnel, as they call it, where, you have a touch point and then you bring someone through to a sale, and your ebook is like a giant selling tool. If you bring people over to your website is set up structurally to automate the next step. So this is the thing that's awesome. When you do that marketing automation, you don't have to, it's automated. Yeah. And you can do these things. MailChimp is very inexpensive. Right. You can do a plugin on your WordPress site. The pop-up comes up. You've got your PDF of chapter 2 of, chapter 1, 2, and 3 of the next book. And it delivers that asset to them in the thank you. And it's all automated. But again, that's a business system that you right. need to set up. And again, you're thinking of your writing, not just on the craft side, but on the business side. How does it work?
And this is a great strategy for entrepreneurs who are writing businesses to grow their business. Mm-hmm. Writing books to grow their business. I have a client who is working through the process right now. And her first question was, am I going to sell enough books to make back the investment that I'm making in doing all of these things? And I was like, well, you got to stop thinking about it that way. You have to think about, and I explained to her the same thing that you just did, that your book through Amazon is basically a sales funnel. It'll get them to your training events. It'll get them to your, whatever you put in that book for them to, don't think about the book sales. Think about the bigger picture on how you grow your audience. But yeah, it's a completely different mindset than just thinking, how do I hit the New York Times bestseller list?
Right. Yeah. And that's really more of an outcome of a process, and if you want to do that particular thing, there's a particular way to do it. But, if you really want to build either a partial income or become a full-time writer or use your book as a way to grow your business in other ways, which is a huge opportunity. Books are the most constant content. It is, we see it in a different way from a blog post or any other form of content. It just sits up there on, and it has incredible brand effects. You know what I mean? So it's an effort, but the thing is, you go to all that effort, you don't want to go to all that effort if you don't have a marketing system in place to then optimize for what it can do for you. And the other thing, I think, with fiction, so with nonfiction, you can recoup the money through, even one speaking event would probably do that, where you're paid instead of, just building your reputation. So now, you put that on all the speakers bureaus and they're like, oh, book author. And truly, authors who are on speakers bureaus and make money that way, they have a new book coming out every several years just so that their page pops again and they have fresh content. So they know the power of the book. But for fiction authors, I think, you have to have a longer term plan that you do have to invest in the beginning. You've got to have excellent editing, a professionally laid out product, a beautiful cover, and those things cost money, and you have to put money into marketing. Mm-hmm. But like any entrepreneur, again, this is why I love that analogy is, you don't plan to make money, in your first year. What you do is you build a foundation for something that you can scale. So that, you can see, and any of the guys who hit it big time, almost all of them, that overnight success story is extremely rare. It's really more of a slogging, and then you kind of hit an inflection point and your brand takes off. Everybody gets it. Everybody's talking about it. You're starting to get a lot more organic, and you still have to pay for traffic, but you're getting a lot more organic, income from it, or organic traffic that leads to income. And so, because the fans, they go with you, and especially if you've set up that ability to capture that consumer information by getting them on your email list, because now they're excited and they're telling their friends. So book number 3 is going to sell a lot more than book number 1. But if you never set up the structure and the foundation to set those things in motion, it never quite takes off because you never got to talk to your fans. And, people say social doesn't sell books, but it does. But really what it does is an incredible place for you to, meet people and draw them into your world, and then capture their email and, just engage them by giving. Truly, do not be afraid to give away stuff when you are building the foundation for your indie publishing business.
But even there needs to be a strategy to it, because I see people doing the free downloads, but they haven't taken advantage of doing those things that you just mentioned, like having a link to their website and having a freebie ready to go, and, having anything in there. Free downloads on Amazon mean nothing now. So, you
only
have to
about 4% are read is what I've heard.
Right. So, be smart in the strategy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Kathy, that was such amazing information. A lot to take in, a lot to think about. No, it's good.
Coffee.
Yes, exactly. I know. I need another cup after that. But I want to talk to you about conferences, in particular, your conference, PubSmart, and when that happens and how that happens and how we get there.
Well, yeah. So PubSmart was 2 years. For about 2 years, it has a different name the second year. But what I would really love to do in the future is do a Publish users conference.
Fun.
That to me would be great, because I just know exactly who I trust as the best teachers in the world, and we have an incredible community of authors that are growing, and I'd love to bring them all together to meet each other too.
Yeah.
But I have done author self-publishing school by Amy Collins is another one that we're working on as a sponsor for her. She's just an incredible resource around distribution, and she comes out at 25 years of doing that and is kind of creating a neat system, like a one-day intensive. She came to Charleston and she did that for us and wants to take it around the country. And it's literally just this one-day deep dive, and talk about blow your mind. My mind was blown, but we had the inaugural one here a couple of weeks in Charleston, and plan to help her roll that out across the country. Because, I didn't think that conferences are amazing, but I love that you're doing this virtually because it is an affordability factor.
Yes.
And they're very expensive and they last for several days. And so our concept was if we could hit some major markets with a one-day intensive and transfer all the knowledge, and then you could just go home and go to bed because your brain hurt because you got it all in day. But then take that and, turn it into some type of an online community that would stay connected. But I think the concept is great because there is something about the real world that's fabulous, to be able to ask those questions in a real setting and have a relationship. So that's something we're trying.
Cool.
Yeah.
And where are you headed to this spring in terms of conferences? I'm just curious.
Oh, well, I'll be at Book Expo America. I will probably go back to Judith Briles. It's harder for me to get to, I like the smaller conferences, quite honestly, but it's harder for me to travel as we grow to all of these conferences. So I have to be more selective about where I go.
Sure.
I do a lot of online, like the Indie Fringe conference is coming up in March. That's a great one online. Would love to go over to London. Next phase that I see for the authors that we're distributing is that could be a very interesting model for Frankfurt and London, getting them overseas. We had one author who, and this is an interesting way, again, how authors are becoming really savvy business people, but her agent negotiated, she has a children's book, middle grade on Egypt, and negotiated a huge contract with a Chinese publisher.
Wow.
Who they're trying to bring in more books in English. It's an award-winning book, but I'd love to crack that code for authors with great content, make it possible for them to get some of these interesting rights that you can negotiate for, in English or also translation.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I want to get, especially my book for grieving mothers, and I've just published another one for a client who wrote on grieving mothers, and so like different things like that are definitely universal, international, right, and need to be in the hands of people all over the place. So.
Absolutely. No, there's never been more opportunity. There's just, people have to make it a little simpler for the indies to navigate some of this stuff. So absolutely. That's what I'm like, what if Publish could have an agent who could help authors, who are ready for that. The other thing is, just being prepared for some of the opportunities. And again, I see people rushing and not laying a foundation for some of those things. Like, I was talking about the Amazon ads. Well, you're not going to have success if you have one review or 3 reviews, because you don't have you don't have your page built out so that when you get the traffic there, you can actually convert to a sale. So, the same thing with the website, you got to have the foundation there. If you really want to go global, like, where's the page for publishers overseas so that they can, come into your universe and learn more about you and see if it's a good fit, and where's the social proof if they just go to your website while they're at a conference and they just don't find anything there.
Right.
So they want to see a professionalism that really does just take groundwork again,
right.
Getting the pieces in place. But I guess that's the big thing. Don't delay just because you don't get it together, but make sure foundations are there for every next step of your business.
That's really important, that foundation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. Where do people find you and all of your wonderfulness?
Well, you can visit publish.com, and, anyone can write me at Kathy@publish.com, and, we're Publish Me on Twitter, and we're on Facebook, and, we have online webinars every month too. So, if you follow us on Twitter, you can sign up for those webinars. I think there's one today at noon, where it's all about email list building.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.